It's about the sociology of reef science. I just want to talk about the people and how we do business, and because to me that's the key to the delivery of science into management. And it's the people, stupid. So it's a bit of a switch in gear, and it's really about how we do business. What's the business of linking science to management? And it's very important to consider right now. This topic is coral reef futures. We need to be thinking all the while, evaluating our linkage mechanisms, evaluating how we can get a better outcome for coral reefs, and the Great Barrier Reef in particular is my interest. I would say, to be blunt, that the performance of linkage, the history of it is not good, but has great potential to improve. It's a bit like my grade 1 report card. Works well, needs constant supervision. So of what use to reef management is good science? And we'll talk about what's good science maybe in another seminar. But I think it's imperative to improve our delivery. I think the pressures are rising on us all the time. I love Diana's slide and of that rising complexity. There seemed to be this long sleepy period, of the 70s and 80s, and then it's going off the scale. Long gone are the days when you could go around to Bob Endine's door and cut up his Stop the Crown of Thorns sticker and put a bit of it on Anne Cameron's door and put up something like Save the Crown of Thorns. That'd be very non-politically correct these days. Life is messier, and I think we've seen already some of the reasons why. I think I've got to update this slide. I got it from one of the State of the World's Reefs books from Ames, and the 44% severely degraded is a stark figure. Overfishing, I would add in general, having taking into account your slide, John, but you can see that the trend there is pretty negative. And what about the barrier reef? Well, I don't want to be accused of Pollyannaism, but it's a lot better on the barrier reef. But does it get to look any better? It ought to be. We don't have a Manila or a Jakarta sitting right next door to it. We don't permit mining. Tourism, fishing and shipping are all managed, and we could start a good argument probably by talking about how well managed they are. I'll probably have a different view after the 1st of November. And there is active management. The reef, it doesn't get to look much better in terms of managing reef systems than the barrier reef. Well, why do we need it? And there's just we've seen some of these mentioned already. The Crown of Thorns is still out there, Diana. There's been some good work done that it heavily implicates now the water quality hypothesis. Some of the other ones have dropped down in their likelihood of being correct. Bleaching, water quality, fishing impacts. We do have our issues. We have the issue of the shifting baselines, and that's been a very topical global issue, and I strongly support this feeling of having, I think, maybe 40-odd years snorkeled at Northwest Island in the 60s, and there has been long-term shifts in our lifetimes on the Great Barrier Reef. And I know there's work underway now in the centre and other places, Terry. It goes back much further. We know that. Trouble is, the shifting baselines could well hit the wall, and that stable state model of yours, I like the fact that you had an axis there, John. Well, actually, that drop there could be real, and not just running out of graph paper, depending on what happens with climate change. So let's just talk about the sociology of science. Oh, that's my ad for Matt Surf. It's coming, Margaret. I just want to run through and look at it. So let's start by looking at the problems and take the lid off. And look, the initial comments here are going to sound negative, but it's to make a point on starting from a position that we can improve from. With apologies to Velikovsky, there are cultures in collision when you talk about science and management. Environmental managers' view of scientists' approach tend to be a checkbox of problems, like when they're talking about the negative aspects, they would talk about the scientists are all documenting the decline. They're not thinking about solutions. Why are they still fighting the war on various issues and documenting in great detail the car crashes that are occurring that we are trying to fix? Science is all care, no responsibility. And that is a strong impression. I've got great memories of a minister in a former government shouting down the telephone at me when I was in BRS that CSIRO are plotting to get him. This was pre-96, I should tell you. What had happened is that a great scientist in the Hobart lab had put out an assessment of the age of the breeding age of southern bluefin tuna. They pumped it out. The trouble is, the consequence of it was that the tuna was older than they thought, so the standing stock had declined more than they thought. So if you were going to be managing that stock, you wouldn't be increasing quotas, for instance. Trouble is, the minister had that morning proudly announced a release of 100 tonnes to a noisy mob on the southeast part of Australia, and he assumed that scientist was politically motivated and out to get him, and he summons me to Parliament House for a thrashing. Now, that's what I mean by science is all care, no responsibility. I did have to explain to the minister that the bloke was very hard of hearing, doesn't read the newspaper, and as a great statistician, he hasn't got a clue what you're doing with that quota. You know the guy I mean, Bill. Yeah. And the other thing is the managers say, these guys they're all care, no responsibility. How many managers have been left holding the baby? I've left ministers holding the southern shark baby, I know, and Karen saying to me, "You've given me nothing to go to the fishermen with." I've known a friend of mine standing in Upper Burdekin, I think, with a scientist from a nearby big institution that sounds like the Institute of Management in its acronym, and saying, "We know nothing about nitrogen in the reef lagoon." And this water quality manager and reef plan draftee was trying to explain to an angry mob of farmers that we know enough to be concerned about the drift of nitrogen. It's all in the style and the delivery. So quickly then, the scientific view of managers is, in the extreme, in the negative, is equally complementary. The managers don't understand good science. They don't appreciate the orthodoxy of it. And what is orthodoxy? It's a culture. Science has, people talk about doing science. There's systems of rules, and there are good reasons around the rules, the hypothesis testing, the rigorous thinking, the publication, the peer review. It's to an outsider, it appears like a fundamentalist religion. Why are they doing that? They don't ask, the managers often think, why are they asking, the scientists often think that the managers aren't capable of articulating the problem, of asking good questions. They want the stuff yesterday, they don't understand a PhD takes 3 years, and they want to control the answers and the publication. The other thing is, from a scientist perspective, managers often appear to be using the science as a weapon to win an argument. It's not simply informing. So they're there's the two cultures written in a black form to sort of illustrate where they can clash. So what is the consequence? And I'll tell you, the consequence, I remember clearly sitting in a room with John Bunt and Graham Kelleher in '79, and Bunt said to Kelleher, "What are you interested in? What's Gabrumpa going to do?" And Graham reeled off about 3 or 4 things, and Bunt said, "Great, we're doing none of that. We're going to be over here. We want nothing to do with you." And of course it was like that for about 15 years. The CRC coming along was a bit of a turnaround. But anyway, so you can see there's these divides. There's lack of trust, there's tolerance. If it slides off badly, you can get a retreat. A bad behaviour accelerates. You get a failure to converge and a failure of mutual understanding of problems. And in the worst case, it can lead to abusive behaviour, corporate raiding, cost shifting. It gets uglier. It's a rise of arrogance. And it is blunt, but I think you've got to stare that in the face and say, how do we dig up? How do we dig up from those attitudes? And of course, I'm referring to nobody living or dead today. And nobody died in the making of this film. But we do have to reflect on that kind of thinking and how do we dig up. So, how do you know what time it is? Oh, there it is. Okay, so how does it get to look when the link is working? What is good? There is regular mutual review of objectives. It's not like I went to the ICES, the Council of the Seas assessment of the cod in Dublin, of all places, Terrian, and I said, "Do you guys link with industry?" They said, "Yep, regularly. Every 2 years we have a 2-hour meeting with industry. It all goes swimmingly. They know exactly what we're doing." When it's looking good, it's not like that. It's more like the management strategy evaluation work. There's tight links between the managers and rapid reaching of mutual understanding of the problems and changing of tack with incoming science. The problems shift in time. There are agreed priorities and resourcing. We've got some great examples, the seabed study, the RAP monitoring that's happening now with James Cook and Ames. And that's the monitoring of the effects of the rezoning. There's the science results are mission-directed, high credibility. And why are they highly credible when it looks good? Generally, they're arm's length. Generally, they're not appeared to be manipulated. They are independently reviewed, high quality. That's why some of those orthodoxies that the science world brings is important. So applied science is there, sitting on top of this pool of discovery science, reaching out the pearls that the manager can use. I just wanted to use that analogy. But basically, that's where we should be pushing things. That's where it should go. So what are the models for partnerships? You can have one manager and one scientist working together. You get a capture problem with that. The managers working with many scientists. There's very high overheads in that model. There's no time to manage. You're talking to scientists all the time. Then you get the chaos view where you see many managers reaching into many scientist groups. I just said crikey on it. That's chaos. Then you've got the brokerage role that I've been working in with Sheridan and the CRC before the RRRC, the Reef and Rainforest Centre, where you have one or a few managers working with a formal research management framework with one or more scientists. And the Marine and Tropical Science Research Facility, I think, is a great example of that. And Department of Environment Water Resources are pioneering this approach. It's a big scientific hub. It's along the lines that Diana was referring to. And I'll skip over the details of that hub because you'll hear more about it. But that model this is a picture of the consultation steps that go into brokering, designing and delivering, interpreting, synthesising and integrating. It's the way things are moving. This process here, to scale it for you, is about like 2.5 CRCs, if you think in those terms. It's about $20 million per year if you take into account the $10 million of co-investment by the major providers, James Cook, AIM, CSIRO and others, University of Queensland. It engages, what's different is the blue line, the blue line of dots are higher level committees with engagement of the institutional leadership as well. So they're solving problems within their institutions to make the cooperation work. The integration models that are being talked about now, how do you do what Diana talked about? How do you integrate? The dotted line is drawing underpinning science into developing and refining, in this case, indicators and thresholds of concern about the environment, a loop between, and it is sitting on top of strong underpinning discovery science, which is generating scientific reports. The integration step delivers reports, synthesis reporting, outlook reporting, but it doesn't eat the manager's lunch. I mean, the solutions there are options and management responses. So you see a shift out of the science domain into the management domain, but it's a segue, and it's one which is mutually supportive. There should be probably more back arrows in that diagram. Okay, the simple version of that diagram, and this is a point I wanted to drive home. It's quite rare for underpinning science. Oh yeah, I've got a red button there. Here, it's quite rare for that to deliver straight into policy and the public. It happens where there's a killer app, a killer observation that's very telling, very illustrative to the public or a policymaker or a politician. It's more likely that the graph, the hard work that goes into the underpinning science feeds into some kind of integration system. And that's the role that I've enjoyed seeing develop under the Reef and Rainforest Centre, which is delivering the Marine and Tropical Science Facility for the government in North Queensland. So there's no shortage of things to be working on. And I'd just like to spend 10 minutes on each of these questions, Terry, if that's okay, because they're quite important to me. No, it's really meant to just blow you away with them. There's plenty of problems. These are the sorts of questions you get wandering around where people say, we gave a talk to the Queensland Cabinet recently on the state of the reef, and there were no minders, no officials there, just the politicians. And their main question was this one here. Is the reef plan working, and tell us about climate change? So those kind of questions are very simple. But when these things appeared in the research investment strategy for the MATSURF, you'd be surprised how commonly people said, well, no, that's not really a scientific question. Could you ask us another one? So you're getting that understanding, and actually the people posing these questions need to work with the scientists and vice versa to massage the questions into something where policy can emanate, science can deliver. I think that's just to, rather than having some words up there, it looks nice. It's a modern, healthy reef. It's sticking a long way out of the water, looks happy enough, and the worry for us is we want to keep bits of the reef looking like that. So there's plenty of work to do on those questions. My thesis to you is that attitude does matter, mutual regard and understanding of the roles of, I'm talking about science and management, but I could have added in policy development and other aspects of the mix, public opinion. So my conclusions are the need for good science linking to good management is greater than ever. That link needs to be managed. It doesn't just happen. You need to monitor how you're doing it and is it working. And then there are some fundamental principles underneath the ones I referred to. Remember when it looks good before. There needs to be a continual reminder of clear purpose. What are we trying to do? A commitment to achieve it is the resources and the people and the capacity, the human capacity there to deal with it, and an accountability. So purpose, commitment and accountability. By accountability I don't mean punishing the guilty, I mean feedback mechanisms, transparency. So I'd leave you with that last one. Transparency of operation is the pathway out of those black views of the interaction that I painted at the beginning. Thanks, Terry. Thank you all.